and welcome back to the Girl Gone London channel. If you're new here, my name is Kaylin, and today we are talking about practical mistakes that Americans make when visiting the UK. Whether you're an American planning a trip or you're a Brit who is about to nod their head along, or maybe you disagree with some of these, let me know in the comments. Let's get started. The first mistake Americans make when visiting the UK is only visiting London. Of course, London is important to visit. It's part of the name of this channel after all, and the easiest city to get to directly from the US. I could go on and on about how great London is, so don't get me wrong, don't skip it, but try and make time to venture out. The most beautiful parts of the UK are far outside the city. My favorite area is actually the Scottish Highlands, but even within a day trip from London, you can get to places like Oxford, the Cotswolds, or even to the coastline to see some of the amazing White Cliffs. Consider Wales, consider Northern Ireland, and consider the north of England, which has some of the most beautiful national parks and historic cities like York that are basically out of a postcard. The next mistake people make is grouping things on the same day that aren't close together. We're going to use London as an example, but if you look at a map, the Tower of London and Kensington are on completely different sides of the city. I've seen itineraries where someone wants to do the Tower of London in the morning, then the Natural History Museum in Kensington in the early afternoon, then Borough Market back on the other side of the city, and then finishing with dinner somewhere like Camden in the north. Don't discount the time it takes on the tube to get around and just assume that because it's all in London, then it's all close to each other. Or sometimes people will say they want to go to Windsor Castle in the morning, then a restaurant in central London for lunch. Windsor Castle isn't in London, people. It's in Windsor, which you need to take a train to get to and back. It's best left as a day trip completely on its own. And as for the rest, again, really have a think about planning things in similar parts of the city on the same day. Be strategic. The next major mistake Americans make when visiting the UK is not making sure they figured out how to use their phone to get full service in the UK. Sometimes people will just put their phone on airplane mode and plan to use the Wi-Fi wherever they can get it. This is not a good idea. And that brings me to the sponsor of today's video, Saily. Saily is an eSIM service app with options in over 160 countries, including the UK. Whether you're an American visiting the UK or a Brit visiting somewhere else in the world, it can be downright dangerous to travel without an active SIM card that allows you to access your data and make phone calls within the country you're traveling in. In the UK, for example, you're going to want that data to be able to access things like Google Maps to help you figure out how to get places, as well as up-to-date public transportation information, tube stations, bus stops, all of those things. If you're not familiar with eSIMs, they're very easy to use. With Saily, you just purchase the plan on the website or through the app and follow easy directions to activate. There are no physical components involved to fiddle with. It's all done with the clicks of the button directly on your phone. It'll save you from having to get a local SIM card when you reach the UK, and there's a 24/7 chat support that allows you to ask for help if needed. I love Saily because it means that you no longer have to worry about what type of SIM card your phone needs, or even have any in-depth understanding of local phone networks or how to work your phone abroad. It really makes it seamless to do it all for you and activate instantly once you land, as long as you followed the easy steps beforehand. If you've got a trip coming up, make sure you're prepared by downloading Saily. You can get an exclusive 15% discount on Saily data plans using my code GIRLGONE, or click on the link in my description. Now, number 4 on my list of mistakes Americans make in the UK is not understanding how pubs work. We don't have pub culture in America, and sometimes it can be confusing whether to view them as restaurants or bars because they're actually a mix between the two. Because we sometimes view them as closer to restaurants, Americans don't always understand where the ordering takes place in a pub. We expect that someone is going to come over to our table and ask us for our order, but in a true pub, this is not what happens. You need to go up and order at the bar, both food and drinks. They will then bring it to the table when it's ready, but after that, the pub staff don't act as servers like in a restaurant. If you need something, you'll have to sort yourself out by asking for it yourself. And I don't blame Americans for not knowing this because we just don't have experience in pubs, but now that you know, you won't be the awkward American sitting at the pub table waiting to order. The next mistake is deciding to drive in the UK. There are mixed opinions on this, but here's my hot take. Americans in general really shouldn't be driving in the UK unless they're very experienced in different conditions. It's not just that they drive on the left here, whereas we drive on the right in the US. It's the completely different traffic patterns and usage of the roads, and the fact that I am sorry, Americans, because I'm saying this as an American, but Brits tend to be much better drivers than Americans. And that's because the driving test here is much stricter, and the tight roads and fast speeds and cramped conditions mean that it's much more essential to be good at driving in the UK than in the US, where you can kind of fake it till you make it because our roads are wide and we have tons of stop signs and traffic lights. I just think it's a stressful experience to be driving in the UK as an American, and much of the country is so well connected by train that there's absolutely no point. If you do want to do the great UK road trip, then yes, you will need to drive, and I'm not saying this is something you shouldn't do, but you need to make sure that when you show up, you're actually prepared. Don't be the person who just shows up to rent the car at the airport on day one without having looked into any of the road rules, or giving yourself enough time to take it easy and not rush. Next up is a kind of funny mistake. It's a common misconception in the US that this bridge is called London Bridge. It is not. London Bridge looks like this and is nothing to write home about. This bridge is called Tower Bridge, and when you're asking for directions or including things on your to-do list or asking your taxi driver to take you to the place, just make sure you're using the right terminology. Speaking of terminology, it can also help to know some basic pronunciations that foreigners often get wrong. Some of them in London, including Westminster, not Westminster, Leicester, not Leicester, or however Americans say it. It's Gloucester, like Gloucester Road, not Gloucester. And outside of London, you've got places like Warwick, not Warwick. Anything that ends in S-H-I-R-E is shire, not shire, so Hampshire, Buckinghamshire. Birmingham in the UK is Birmingham, not Birmingham, like in the US. And I'm not even 100% great at saying this one myself, but I will do my best. This city is not Edinburgh, that's definitely wrong. And it's technically not Edinburgh either. It's actually Edinburgh. So do your best to get the bruh at the end of that sentence and it sounds more authentic and like you know what you're talking about. Our second to last mistake to not make in the UK as an American is waiting for your bill or check to be brought to you at the end of a meal without asking for it. In the UK, you need to signal to your server that you are finished and you're ready to be brought the check, which is called the bill in the UK. If you just sit around talking, they're going to think you're still enjoying the experience of dining out and catching up with friends or family. They're not going to know that you're waiting to be brought the bill. This throws Americans because the servers do bring the bill or check in the US without you asking, so it can be confusing when that doesn't happen in the UK. This doesn't mean service is slow, it just works differently, so feel free to ask for the bill when you're ready for it and don't just awkwardly sit there waiting. Finally, and this is one of the most common mistakes Americans make in the UK, is looking in the wrong direction when crossing the street. Even if you're not driving, other people around you are, and as a pedestrian, it can be extremely dangerous if you're not aware of this or automatically looking in the direction you would normally look for traffic. In London, there are often signs painted on the road telling visitors, or at least hoping to remind them, which way to look, but I always, 10 years into living here, still look both ways every time when I cross the road in the UK, even now, to prevent any close calls. This brings me to the end of this video. What are your practical tips for Americans visiting the UK? Let me know down below, and as always, thanks very much for watching.